Did you know that this kid became the most powerful man in the world at the age of just 9? His name was Pharaoh Tutankhamun, and he ruled over Egypt 3,000 years ago. He was born in 1341 BC to a royal couple. His father was Pharaoh Akhenaten, who had taken the throne when he was only 16, and his mother was Queen Kip. When Tutankhamun was born, his father was already married to another woman, which made young Tutankhamun a half-brother to the next in line to the throne. But that didn't matter, because his father loved him more than anyone else, and so he groomed Tutankhamun to be his successor. The boy was taught everything about ruling a kingdom, and by the time he turned 8, he knew how to read and write hieroglyphics, how to do mathematics, and how to play the harp. He also learned how to hunt dangerous animals like lions, leopards, and elephants. When he turned 9, his dad officially named him the Crown Prince. But this wasn't some kind of ceremonial title. No, it meant that Tutankhamun was now officially second in command. He could make decisions on behalf of his father. He could issue commands to the military, and he even got his own palace. But there was a problem. Tutankhamun's father, King Akhenaten, was obsessed with the sun god Aten, and this obsession was slowly destroying Egypt. You see, Aten was not the most important god in Egypt. That title belonged to Ammon, the king of the gods. But King Akhenaten didn't care about that. In fact, he was so obsessed with Aten that he moved the capital city from Thebes to Amarna and changed its name to Akhetaten, meaning the horizon of Aten. He then started a propaganda campaign to promote Atenism, basically a religion that worshipped only one god. He closed all the temples dedicated to other gods, including the Temple of Karnak, which was dedicated to Ammon. He then ordered every statue of Ammon to be destroyed. Even the priests of Ammon were not spared. They were either put to death or forced to flee. So when Tutankhamun took the throne, he found himself in a mess. The people hated his father for what he had done, and when they saw the young Tutankhamun, they hoped that the kid would fix everything. But Tutankhamun was just 9 years old. Who was going to help him? Fortunately, he had one ally, his grandmother, Queen T. She was the wife of a previous pharaoh and the mother of Akhenaten. She took young Tutankhamun under her wing and helped him to navigate the treacherous waters of the royal court. At the same time, another royal, a guy called Horemheb, was also trying to help the pharaoh. He was the commander of the Egyptian army, and he wanted to restore order to the kingdom. But there was another contender, a vizier named Ai. He wanted to become the most powerful man in Egypt, and so he did everything he could to control the young pharaoh. It was a tough balancing act for Tutankhamun, but he managed to stay one step ahead of Ai. He appointed Horemheb as his vizier instead, and together they began to undo the damage that Akhenaten had caused. First, they reopened the temples that Akhenaten had shut down, including the Temple of Karnak. They then launched a propaganda campaign of their own, which promoted traditional Egyptian religion. And finally, they reinstated the old capital city, Thebes. And while all this was happening, something remarkable was also happening to Tutankhamun. He underwent a transformation. When he came to power, he was a skinny, frail kid. But after a few years of exercising and eating well, he grew into an athletic young man. He hunted dangerous animals, rode horses, and sailed boats. Now, all this is pretty impressive for someone who was born with a silver spoon. But that's not where the story ends. Unfortunately, when he was only 18 years old, Tutankhamun fell ill. At first, his servants thought that it was just a normal fever, but they soon realized that it was much more serious. The pharaoh was losing weight. He couldn't get out of bed, and he was having trouble breathing. To make things worse, he also suffered from malaria. It was clear that the pharaoh was dying. His advisors panicked. They knew that if the pharaoh died without an heir, Egypt would descend into chaos. So they pressured Tutankhamun to marry and produce an heir. But the pharaoh was too sick to think about anything other than surviving. As days passed, things went from bad to worse. Tutankhamun's condition continued to deteriorate, and it became clear that he wouldn't survive. His advisors were now desperate. They tried everything to save him, but nothing worked. Finally, on February 11th, 1323 BC, Tutankhamun breathed his last breath. He was only 19 years old. The news of the pharaoh's death spread like wildfire. People across Egypt mourned the loss of their beloved ruler, but the pharaoh's advisors were not interested in mourning. They were interested in seizing power. The vizier, had been waiting for this moment for years. He quickly married Tutankhamun's widow and took the throne for himself. Horemheb was furious, but he knew that he couldn't fight and so he retired to his estate. However, Tutankhamun's legacy lived on. People continued to worship him as a god, and his tomb was filled with treasure. In fact, it was the only tomb of a pharaoh that was left relatively untouched by grave robbers, because people believed that it was cursed. This belief was based on a story that was told by a priest named Ptahhotep. According to Ptahhotep, when Tutankhamun died, his body didn't decay. Instead, it turned into gold. This is why Tutankhamun is often depicted as a golden king. The curse story gained traction after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter. It was the only tomb of a pharaoh that was found intact, which led many to believe that the curse was real. Of course, it wasn't. There is no evidence that Tutankhamun's body turned into gold. But the story makes for a great legend. And speaking of legends, here's one for you. Did you know that ancient Thebes once assembled an elite military force that went undefeated in war? These soldiers were known as the Theban Sacred Band, and they were considered to be the best fighters in the world. And if you want to know more about them, click on this video that I made about them. Thank you for watching.